really good to see you. Just so thankful that we are not here pulling our hair out and weeping and traumatized and just ready to go to bed. So it's just really, really wonderful to have this meeting at this particular moment. And I just want, I get a little bit of leeway because I'm a mental health professional to do sort of things that are not so political. I would just like to invite everybody on this Zoom to do something for me, which is to put your hands on your screen and just, hello. If we were together, we would be hugging. And I am just so happy to see you. So just reach out to everybody here and touch them through cyberspace, because we are a close group of many people. And I love all of you. And I wish that we could all be in somebody's big backyard having a big group hug. But anyway, we have a really great meeting today. We are going to be hearing from Christine White from Georgia, who's going to talk to us about why we are raising money for Georgia for the runoff, even though Reverend Warnock's campaign probably is, you know, gathering millions of dollars. There is still work to be done in Georgia, and Christine White is going to be telling us what her group of grassroots groups does and how our money will be used, and we will hear from her shortly. We're also going to, of course, hear from Jim Shelton. He'll do a little bit of analysis about what happened and where we are and his thoughts about that. And I'll mention this again later in the meeting, but we just want to give you a heads up that we are going to do a special sort of Jim Shelton looks back and Jim Shelton looks forward meeting on December 1st at 7 o'clock. So just feel free to come to that if you want a deeper dive. And if you just want a chance to be able to schmooze more with Jim. And other people who are on the Zoom offering their thoughts. So December 1st at 7 o'clock, that's on our calendar on our website, but feel free to come to that. We have a special surprise video at the end of this meeting, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to be just a fun little video from someone that we supported. So hope that you stay to the end. And before I hand it off to Jim, I guess I just want to say just a couple of things. You know, what happened over the last week, as Jim was saying in our new member orientation, you know, it was a surprise to most of us, a welcome surprise to most of us. And yet many of us who were knocking on doors, we were hearing messages from voters, working class voters, poor voters, Republican voters, Democratic voters, that just kept giving us hope. And then we'd go home and read the newspapers and be like, I guess that was just sort of a fluky day, just a fluky neighborhood in Pennsylvania. But I just wanted to tell you about just one voter that I talked to when I was canvassing in Pennsylvania, in York, in a very poor neighborhood of very poor little houses that just were sort of ramshackle. And somebody opened the door who was a Black gentleman, an older Black gentleman. He it turned out that he was originally from Haiti. And it was just, it was a neighborhood and a home where I really didn't have that much expectation that the voters within it were kind of thinking about our country in general. But I asked him if he was thinking about the election, and he said, of course. And I said, you know, what are your thoughts? What, you know, what's on your mind with that? And he said, democracy. Of course, democracy. I'm voting for Democrats. And I was so surprised, which probably shows a bias on my part. But, you know, I just thought, okay, like if people are really paying attention to the big issues in neighborhoods where they have worries that are day to day and immediate, then, you know, maybe there is some hope. But I didn't actually become optimistic until Tuesday night. the one thing that I read this week that really made a lasting impression on me, and actually is a good message for us to end with, thinking about 31st Street, was from Tom Friedman. I don't know if any of you saw his column, but the end of his column, I think the headline was, "We missed an arrow." But the end of his column, he said this: "We did not get a clean bill of health. We got a diagnosis that our political white blood cells did okay in beating back the metastasizing infection that threatened to kill our whole electoral system. But that infection is still here, which is why the doctor advised, behave in healthy ways, build back your strength, and return in 24 months for another scan." And I guess I would just like to say, we all are those white blood cells, because of thousands of people across this country, and because of the thousands of voters who, want this country to be a normal place that's not crazy and not angry and not full of hate. Like, we are the white blood cells, and we have to keep fighting, and we have to keep our body politic healthy. And we are going to be here in 2 years to see how we're doing and to see about the health of our nation. And as far as 31st Street goes, we are not going anywhere. We're going to be active throughout the next 2 years, and we very much hope that you will stay with us, because we've done an amazing job this year, and we're going to just keep on going. So thank you. And Jim Shelton, I will hand it off to you.
Great. So I think most of you know me. I'm the political analyst, and I get to show some slides. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. And there we go. People see that and people hear me? Okay. So we really have two purposes today, and the more important purpose is to raise support for Raphael Warnock. But our intention always was to give some lessons learned and what happened. And again, we're going to provide a lot more detail on December 1st. Anybody wants to come. But in the meantime, I'm going to hit a number of the more important things, hopefully not too quickly and hopefully not too wonky with too much data to throw at you, but it's the best I can do. So I can't resist showing a couple of slides from a month ago. And we were pretty kind of down in a way at that point. People said we were going to be losing. And we made the observation that much of the polling might actually be underestimating the Democratic vote. And we've since learned that that was indeed the case. But maybe more importantly, we took a policy of, we don't care, we're going to keep pushing as hard as we can. Among other things, making the point that even if we lose control of the House, it'll still be better to lose by less. For these two reasons, that there are a few moderate Republicans there, and we'll be better set up to regain control in 2024. By the way, I'm thinking we're going to be at about 216, 217. It's not out of possible that we could get to 218, but anyway, that's where I'm kind of, I may be a little optimistic for that, but that's what I'm thinking. So that's really much better than anybody thought. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you the money that we raised this year. You raised with us. And what do you suppose was the most important single thing that we, quantitatively, I don't know if it's most important, but the largest amount that we raised? Well, actually, it's grassroots groups. So for those of you who may be a little new, our strategy beginning about well over a year ago was to sort of try to build infrastructure, building up for this time, and not just be doing elections at the end. And these grassroots groups include also some major support for some charitable C3 organizations. So, and you can see at the bottom line, we did pass the 2 million mark already as of the end of the main election. Then also we provided a lot to state parties, But also in a timely fashion, we did almost 700,000 for elections, notably the US House and the 2 state legislatures in Pennsylvania and North Carolina that I'm going to come back to. So thank you everyone who really pitched in for that. So moving to the Congress, to the House, really, here's our scorecard. So, you know, as hopefully most of you know, we work hard to look for what we call sweet spot races, competitive races, where, you know, we think our support can make a significant difference. And we did a lot better in some of these than I expected, actually. But notice that overall, we were, I guess, what, 7 for 9. Which is pretty good. We don't aim for 100% because we think something's wrong. It's easy to get 100% if you just cherry pick the ones that you think are easy to win. 8 of these were challengers. 1 was an incumbent. So we have helped get us to where we are. But notice these small margins. Colorado 8, less than 1%. New Mexico 2, less than 1%. And here are their faces. And again, for those 2 races, here are the current margins that they're showing. You know, those will change when the later votes come in, but they have been declared victories. So, you know, we helped. And I think we helped in a meaningful way. Now, shifting to Pennsylvania specifically, this was our biggest priority. This is where we did so much infrastructure work and so forth leading up to the election. And we did it in a cumulative way, in a sequential way. And we started by supporting the Democratic Party with SPAN, our partner, the State Party Advancement Network. So between them and us, we raised $1 million back in the fall of last year to get the Democratic Party well launched, much better than they have in recent memory. It was supposed to be a model of volunteer-led organizations. I think there hopefully is some of that. A lot of that evolved into more traditional on-the-ground organizing. They got a lot more money, but we were able to get them launched. And I can tell you that we're around the state, and we were in many parts of the state, they were there. They were out doing the organizing in a very effective way. And that's a lot of what I think helped, especially Fetterman. So then we did grassroots groups, almost $400,000, Latino, Asian, voter registration, again, all this sort of infrastructure building. And then finally, the legislature races, a little over $100,000, relatively modest by that way. But we had to make some decisions. But of course, one of the reasons we do that is we really believe that when you have strong local races, it helps the top of the ticket as well. And we did 7,000 working American letters and almost 1,700 doors. And they were quality doors. They weren't just, you know, lit drops. They were, you know, we do good training. We had our canvassing video, and folks were really well trained, good quality persuasion and turnout canvassing. So in addition to winning those 2 statewide races, many of you probably know that it looks very likely, highly likely, the Dems think it's a sure thing that the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives has now flipped, and that included our support, which we'll talk about. So currently they have 90 Democrats out of 203, and they think they're going to get to 103. It's currently on the New York Times 101, but there are 2 other races that are very, very close that they think that they will win when the later votes are counted, provisional, and so forth. So here's our candidates. And notice particularly Missy Serrato, who called into our one of our meetings to help raise money for them. And here's our scorecard. So again, 6 out of 8 of the ones that we supported, a lot of them a lot more than I ever expected. We did pretty well in suburban counties in Philadelphia and we're against Republican incumbents, entrenched Republican incumbents. But again, notice this one character, this candidate Monroe, very close. Missy Serrato currently being reported as 0.0% difference. I think it's a 2 vote margin currently, but they think they're going to win when the later votes are counted. So again, I think we did get to the sweet spot. We did contribute. If we helped even only 2 candidates, that was enough to make the difference. Now, lastly, North Carolina, we all know we didn't do very well in North Carolina. And you know, we did weigh in there, and I think you'll see we had some impact because actually, again, 3 of the 8 that we supported did well, even though it was not a good night for the state legislature for the Dems. Again, notice this one candidate, Staten Williams in Cabarrus County, down near Mecklenburg, Charlotte. Notice that she's won by 2 points. Although the New York Times hasn't conceded that one yet. But here's the more there she is, picture of her, and the other 2 that we that won. One of the biggest objectives in North Carolina was protecting the governor's veto. And very soon after on election night, they said the governor's veto has been protected. Well, it wasn't protected in the Senate, and it was only protected in the House by 1 vote. Now realize how important this is for abortion or whatever. I mean, you've got a very strong Republican House that would pass all kinds of nefarious things were it not for the governor. And in North Carolina, the veto override is only 60%. So they have 40, they think they have 49 votes, but that 1 vote, that 1 marginal vote is that in fact Staten Williams, and she only won by 425 votes, partly with our financial vote, but also, wait, there's more. We had this grassroots partner that we raised about $100,000 for, down home North Carolina. Many of you may remember that. They actually knocked in that district 42,000 doors. Now these numbers seem, you know, what is that? That's many more voters than voted Democratic or Republican in this election, and 7,000 conversations. So, you know, this is one other area where I think our selection, you know, you don't quite know how things are going to turn out, made a big difference. You know, I want to be, you know, reasonable about our contribution. One of the things that kind of bothers me is the way a lot of folks take a lot of credit for things. It's all collaborative. It's all collective. It's you know, very rarely just what one group does. But this is one instance where we I think we might have actually made the difference in this particular situation. So anyway, our overall scorecard of the competitive races, again, we'd like to say, I like to say, typically we hope we win about 60%. That means we're really in the competitive area. And as it turns out, if you add those 3 together, it's kind of apples and oranges. That comes out with about 64%. So it, you know, it just happens to work out to where we want it to be. It was a good night. I do want to mention also that we have not been that active in Michigan, but between last year and this year, we did raise $176,000 for the Michigan Democratic Party with George and Mary. I definitely wanted, and Dan definitely wanted to mention that. And the Democratic Party in Michigan was kind of neglected because they didn't have a Senate race. So we weighed in, I think, at a good time. Obviously, many things contributed to that, as I was just saying, but I think we can be happy about that contribution as well. All right, and then there's Aaron and George and some other people. And Daniels, who unfortunately didn't win, the candidate. But anyway, we love our canvassing. those of us who canvass. Very rewarding, good way to find out what the voters are thinking. As Lisa mentioned, this happens to be one in Harrisburg. We got to the point where I think we had 40 people in York. At the same time, we had a dozen people in suburban Allegheny and some other people in various other places. And you couldn't get one picture because people were anxious to get out and doing their canvassing, but this is representative. Oops. Anyway. No, I don't know why this is showing that. Oh, this is our, yeah, I know why. This is our goal was 12,000 doors knocked. So did we reach that? Well, turned out we ended up reaching 24,000 doors, and I would say quality doors, because we educated ourselves every Thursday before a canvass. And we did these other things of recruiting volunteers, registering voters, which is hard to do in that process, yard signs, 7,000 Working America letters, which we think are very effective ways to do letters, and then phoning and ballot curing and various other things. And just one other picture with our Congressman-elect Chris DeLuzio and a couple of our great volunteers. So I'm about to turn this over to Christine White, but I'm just going to show one slide about, for emphasis on the Georgia Alliance for Progress and their support for Reverend Warnock. One is that, of course, there are compelling reasons to elect him. We all know, you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't know this. But just to lay it out a little better, we do need a better Dem majority to kind of help finesse Kristen Sinema and Manchin. And we need to be better prepared for 2024. We got a tough election in 2024, especially for Senate. And, Bernie Sanders might die and the governor of Vermont could appoint a Republican. So there's plenty of reason to want this to pass, mostly because he's a great, fine senator. So the reason we like the Georgia Alliance for Progress is we really think that there's already a strong set of grassroots groups. And rather than trying to pick out some, we really think they're in the best position to allocate funds to have the best impact among those C4 organizations and for coordination among them, which is another role that they play. And also, they're emphasizing canvassing, they're emphasizing turnout, which I think is strategically very strong. And again, in terms of trying to help persuade you to help us with money, just time is of the essence, as they say in contracts. In some counties, early voting actually starts in 13 days. So we need to kind of keep things going, get things going. They need the support now. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine and stop sharing. Over to you, Christine.
Hello. I'm going to just take a minute to appreciate all of you while our development director, Anna Beck, has an opportunity to switch slides and get us up and going. But I truly want to say that with my whole heart, I am so thankful and grateful for y'all. Everything that I've heard on this call since I've been on a few minutes before 4 has just lifted my spirits. You all don't know the type of fight we end up fighting, even among our allies and folks who say that they want the same thing. But as you know, all political donors and investors and theorists and strategists do not support or appreciate grassroots organizing, trusted messengers, canvassing, the way that I have heard you all lift it up and really give it its due respect. A lot of the reason that folks deny the impact of trusted messengers is just because they're not one. They don't know how to be a trusted messenger. And so they lean on what they know, which we can't blame them for. But it has just been so inspiring and so heartwarming to hear your enthusiasm. And I'm just grateful and thankful that you're here. I apologize, I didn't change the date. I've been doing these briefings probably a couple a day. I didn't do any yesterday. I took a break Saturday, but we've been doing a few of these every day. And so I'm just thankful that you guys are as enthused as we are for the future of Georgia and for the future of the South, really. What we are doing in Georgia is laying the foundation for democracy that really builds upon a multiracial framework and deconstructs the very in-depth and ingrained effects of white supremacy, of enslavement, of just racial otherness that controls what we see and all of the efforts really in the South. And so we are not just hopeful for Georgia and excited about the success that we have, but we are hopeful and excited about what we are going to see when thousands and thousands of progressive voters who have heretofore not ever believed that their voice could make a difference are empowered to join our democracy and be fully fledged and full investors with their whole body and their hearts in the American process. So I'll just start with our first slide. I do need to say a quick disclaimer because that's just the nature of this work. Georgia Alliance, we are the C3, C4, and PAC fundraising entity for the progressive movement in the state. And so if you are here representing a C3, just take what information you can and apply it as it is legally appropriate. And if you are, there will be information shared that is C4 appropriate. And so you can stay on the call in your personal capacity. If you are from the media, we ask that you don't have your media hat on during this conversation, and that if you are here for the purposes of distributing this information as the media, that you will log off. And we'll just also ask that you don't share any of this information on social media. My colleague Anna will be putting our full plan. It's not our full plan. Our full plan is like almost hundreds of spreadsheets and all manner of things, but our abbreviated plan, our brief in the chat so that you guys can see it and you can see all of our giving information. Next slide, please. And also just so good to see so many faces. It seems like I've seen some of you before. I don't know why, I don't know where. Mary, you look so familiar. We've had a conversation before, I feel. Anyway, Georgia Alliance we are scheduling update calls for all of our donors. And those calls will happen 10 o'clock every Monday. And so you will receive a calendar invite. We hope that you will share it with folks who are sincerely intentional about being donors. This is not sort of a strategy session. We don't have time for community strategy sessions. We've been building our strategy for the past 6 months. So we will ask that if you are interested in sharing this with someone who wants to be a donor and wants to support the strategy that is already in place, that you will share that information. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I am Christine White of Georgia Alliance for Progress. The entities that I represent is a C3, a C4, and 2 PACs. We are a coalition, and you can see these lines, as our development director, Anna Beck, likes to say. These lines exist for the purpose of the pictures, but the way that we operate as a community, as an infrastructure, there are no lines. Georgia Alliance incubated and started what's now called America Votes Georgia, also Progress Georgia, and Represent Georgia. Pro Georgia actually was the first time, or I don't want to say the first time because coalition is older than all of us, but it was the first organized effort to pull donors and organizers together. And so that is run by Tamika Atkins. And I just wanted to show you that there are real people behind these incredible entities, these engines of democracy. Next. And so these are the entities, the coalition tables. These coalition tables, we are, I just sort of filled in the information for you, but we support over 120 grassroots and national organizations that have permanent, what am I trying to say, that are permanently rooted in the state. So there are some organizations like the Sierra Club that are part of our coalition. And then there are organizations that you may not have heard of. Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda is one of them. So organizations that are what we would traditionally consider to be grassroots, but also much larger organizations that operate as grassroots. And that's really the point. We want organizations to operate as community advocates, not just to be in community, trying to tell communities what to do, but servicing communities and identifying for communities what makes those communities most powerful, and then bringing that information back to us so we can raise the funds to do that work. Next slide, please. And so this is just a smattering of unfortunately, we don't have everybody's slides. We're working on getting a slide with everybody on there. There's almost too many to really represent in this way, but I just wanted to show you this is what coalition looks like. Our coalition partners meet as a full group once a month, and then they meet in work groups based on what they're working on. So criminal justice work group based mostly around democracy, but criminal justice and democracy, climate justice and democracy, reproductive rights and democracy. They also have work groups. And so these folks are working together. They know each other. We're all on Slack channels and all manner of communication that really keep us energized, but we are like a big family in and of itself. And so the plan that you will see is the plan that has been developed in partnership with this community. Next slide, please. We have 26 partners, and I'm going to now get into the very specific runoff election. We have 26 partners that have raised their hand to knock doors. The budget that you will see in our chat and that you will see at the end of this presentation anticipates that we will be able to fund all of these organizations who want to knock doors. Of course, if we don't come up with all of the funding, all of these organizations may not get funding, or they'll get a very small portion of it. But our idea is that, and our theory of change really is that every organization plays a different role in our community, and all of those communities must be represented in order for us to win. Next slide, please. Not all of our partners are efficient at knocking doors. Some of them are better at phone banking. Some of them are better at creating incredible energy in the streets in their communities. Some of them are doing digital outreach. Some of them are doing relational outreach. So this is all the other mobilizing that will be done. And I just wanted to give you an idea of how many groups we're supporting to do this type of work. We have immigrant groups. We have racial justice groups. We have reproductive rights groups. We have regional organizations. So it's a huge breadth and width, but I will tell you that the folks in these groups, the folks that are really committed and participate regularly in our coalition, are very close, and they, for lack of a better word, ride for each other on each other's issues. So just because you're with an environmental group doesn't mean that when you show up at the legislature, or that when you're out knocking doors, you're only talking about the environment. Because we know that people are holistic, and there are very few one issue people. Next slide. So our timeline, if you have been paying attention to what the Georgia legislature has really made as their best effort to keep us from having the same type of victory that we had in 2021 in the runoff, they have truncated the opportunity that we have to really prepare for this runoff. In 2021, we had 2 months, I believe, from November until beginning of January. Now we only have November to December. And so we have sort of hit the ground running. We reached into our operations budgets for next year and just started funding groups, because we knew that, number one, the money was going to come, because there are lots of folks all around the country really paying attention to this race. It's important to the entire country. And in addition to that, our organizations could not wait. They could not wait for the funding to be transferred. And there was a bank holiday on Friday. And so we wanted to make sure that groups could stay up. Next slide, please. Our general theory of change, our strategic imperative around this election has not changed. It is always about expanding the electorate. There are, we only show up in about 50% of our eligible voters, only 50% of them show up. Our key goal as a coalition is to increase that percentage of participation. We want to make sure that everyone feels empowered to be a part of our democracy. We have to improve on the Black men and Black women, but improve on Black men's share with Black women. We have to improve on AAPI and Latinx turnout. We have to increase the spread out the vote, which is early voting. In this case, we're going to be following up absentee voting for the folks who absolutely have to absentee vote. We'll be chasing those ballots to make sure they get in. And then, of course, there are regional spaces that need really specific attention, like the Black Belt and like North Metro cities. And we have to stay competitive on paid media. Next slide, please. So the assumption is that this is basically a turnout election, and we've known this. It was the same case in 2021. We know who voted, even if we don't know exactly, we don't have a complete breakdown, but we have a sense of who's voted. And so we're going to get all of those folks. We have built our universe around the people who voted, and we're getting all of them out to vote again. I just want to mention that voting is a muscle. And so when you exercise it, you become stronger. And so we want to make sure that we are retouching every person we touched in the general election, but also all the people we touched in 2020 and 2021. Next slide. These are, some of the detail that I think you all would be really interested in. State phones and texts to targeted voters. A lot of that is going to be based on density and our ability to raise funds to knock doors. The more that we're able to knock doors, we will also, of course, do phones, but in some places, knocking doors is just not feasible. So we have to lean more on phones, text, and paid comms. We are, of course, an education focused organization. We've been spending C4 and PAC dollars to educate about the candidate. And then we are also just educating folks about what a runoff is. A lot of people don't even know. And this runoff idea is, of course, the remnants of Jim Crow. And so it's not something that happens all over the country, but Georgia has held on to this idea that if you don't get 50% plus one, that there should be a runoff. And so lots of our voters, who, especially the ones who are new to Georgia, don't even understand the concept of runoff. And so we have a lot of education to do there. Next slide, please. It just gives you a sense of who our general election universe was. And it's very similar. The folks who we knocked 3 million doors in the general election. We have made that universe a little bit smaller. And the universe is not just, we don't knock the, necessarily the doors of 4 million people, but it's everybody gets a touch based on what is most feasible and what our partners can do. So that 60% of the Democratic electorate in Georgia is African American. White folks are holding at about 25%. They've been there 25, 26% for the past few decades. The Asian American and Hispanic voters, we've seen huge growth in those areas over the past 2 years. And so we're going to continue to stoke that. But what we see is that they don't necessarily, although they've grown demographically, they haven't necessarily grown as a part of the Democratic electorate. And so we're trying to increase those numbers. Next. And so this is our runoff universe. As you see, it's a little bit smaller than our general election universe. And we will be knocking 2.14 million doors. And we will be giving, depending on the treatment, depending on who the voter is, we will be knocking some doors more than once. Does that make sense? So you will see here that our canvas universe is larger, but this is the number of doors is larger, but this is the universe. Next slide. So our canvas, we hope to knock 4 million doors. I mean, we really need to do 4 million knocks to stay competitive and to get out the folks who we know are the folks who are going to vote with us. We have about a 20, so more recently, it's generally a 20% contact rate. In the last election, in general election, it's been up to about 27%, which is good because I think it's partially because folks are still home from COVID. People have flexible work plans. And so we're reaching far more people than we've reached in the past. Our phone universe is 3.2 million and our mail universe is 2 million. But you see that the total mail pieces is much larger than the universe. We are also taking into consideration, and this is a plan that was not just built with our organizations, but also built with SMP, Senate Majority PAC, and some of the quasi-political organizations that can work on this side. So we build a strategy for what we know has to happen for us to win. And then we identify what part of it can our coalition do. Next slide. So just a little bit more detail into our Canvas plan. We started canvassing the Thursday after elections. We got folks back up. We gave them Wednesday off, and they're back this weekend knocking doors. And so we will ramp. There are a couple of organizations that have the ability to ramp really quickly. And then there are a few organizations that we just had to make sure they had the funding to hold what they've been doing through the general election. And of course, we were anticipating this. And so organizations were preparing to hold, and that's why we were able to get lit printed up even before we knew that we would have an election. We had just C3 lit printed up that said what the date of the election was, because we didn't know if it was going to be Stacey Abrams and Reverend Warnock, or if it was just going to be Reverend Warnock. But we had that available to partners, and they came and picked it up on Wednesday, and they were out knocking doors on Thursday. Next slide. And this is just gives you a really good sense of what the other tactics are. It's not just Canvas, as I said. We are going to be focusing in digital and on radio. We're going to be focusing on where we have to print materials and mail materials. And then there's just the community engagement, the Souls to the Polls, the Party at the Polls, the sound and video trucks, all of that work, which is just so important to build knowledge of the election and also be a reminder. We can't let anybody forget that there's election, and we really need to push people to the polls during early vote. I meant to say this earlier, but early vote is going to start as early, and this depends on the county, it's up to every county, as early as the 26th, but they have to have early vote by at least the 28th. Next slide. Oh, it's two, I think I did that twice. Sorry, guys. Next slide. I forgot to delete. This is our timeline. I'll just give you a sense of, give you a moment to take that in. As you see, we've been up Canvas since the 9th. And let's see what else. We've been texting, and community engagement doesn't stop. Paid media has not stopped. Paid media went up, and that's a lot of that is SMP. They have really deep pockets, and so they are the ones who are footing the media bill. We are not, we do not put anything on TV, and we actually don't do as huge radio buys. We focus on local community owned radio. Next slide. I think we just have this slide. Oh no, this is our immediate needs slides. I'm sorry. So, as you know, we don't have a lot of time. We are, as I mentioned, we've sort of fronted, and America Votes National has also fronted a good portion of our budget, but we need funding. It's just, there's no other way to put it. I am so thrilled about the news that we have 50% of the Senate, but we have some really incredible folks that don't always vote with us and don't share our values, representing the Democratic Party in the Senate. And we know that we just cannot allow Herschel Walker to represent the United States of America, as you know. And so this is a real fight. I think from the perspective of a Southerner, I'm not surprised at all that it was so close. Lots of folks, my father is from Brooklyn, but lives in California, and just was blown away that the race was so close. But we know that when we put emphasis in face-to-face communications, we win. And so the more people that we can reach out to in the community with trusted messengers, with folks that they're familiar with, through folks they're familiar with, the better chance we have. But all of that costs money, and canvassing is hard. When all of our canvassers are paid. We don't have any programs. There will be programs for volunteers, but what we are focusing on is paid, experienced canvassers who understand those communities, who are native to those communities, and understand the needs of the people that they're talking to. And so this is our most immediate slide. Next slide. Our most immediate budget. This is our overall budget. And so, like I mentioned, there's there's a good amount of support from folks all over the country. This seems very daunting. The actual entire budget for what has to happen in Georgia is 57 million. This is the piece that Georgia Alliance and our partners have broken off and said, we're going to handle this piece. And so it is incumbent, it is important for folks like you, the folks who are supporting democracy in your states, that you are also see the opportunity to support us here in Georgia. And we're just thankful for you. I will pause now and just, I'm sure that there are some questions in the chat. If you, I don't know who wants to run the questions, but I'm open to that. We can also go back to any slide that you may want to look at a little bit more.
Hi, Christine. I'm Aaron. I am the
Aaron.
membership coordinator and the designated question fielder of
Good.
31st Street. So
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
yeah, we're so happy to have you here. And we've been having a glitch with our chat, unfortunately. So I've been getting all the questions. And actually, it's interesting because people can't see each other's questions right now, but they're all very similar, which is in addition to donating money, what else can we do for you? A number of our members are interested in actually going to Georgia. Would you welcome that? Do you have any specific needs for canvassers? And also, how about phoning? Do you need any help with that?
So, I will say it is invaluable to have and to continue this energy that we are seeing across the country and having it focused towards Georgia. It is difficult, as you know, to run volunteer activations. So there are organizations, AV Georgia is pulling together the list of groups that can take volunteers right now. We don't have that list as of yet. We'll have it sometime next week, and I'll make sure that I send it out to you, Jim and Aaron. But I will say this, that the DPG is the Democratic Association of Georgia. They are really good with volunteers, and if they do nothing else well, they know how to manage the volunteers. So I think that they are a good place to volunteer if you want to do something. And I completely understand your desire to use your efforts and all of the things that you've learned from canvassing to outreach. But I also would encourage you to organize funding. Organizing money is what I do. Organizing donors is what I do. And I think that we under emphasize or underappreciate our ability to pull support together. I can only do so many of these briefings. And so luckily we have an incredible group of donors, many of whom live in Georgia and who are from Georgia, but some of whom are all over the country, and they're pulling their people together. And the truth of the matter is that we have a team that has been doing this for several cycles. And though it's wonderful to be able to hear directly from me, that is not necessary for folks who really believe in this work. And so I think that we need to really organize funding and support in a way that we've probably overlooked and underestimated before.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Christine. And we are all on board with funding and supporting you all and the important work that you're doing. We really appreciate your presence here. I know that Anna has put an email in the chat. People, I think, can ask questions as well there. And we're going to have an open mic session at the very end of the Zoom call for more opportunity for member conversation. But thank you again for coming. And we need to get to the next part of our meeting, but really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks again, Christine. We appreciate your taking this time. And that was a very helpful PowerPoint. It gave us a lot of information. A lot of people are donating. We're having problems with communication in the chat, but I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they are donating. So that is fantastic. So we are going to go to Mary Pence, the chair, the leader of our fundraising efforts, to talk about what we're doing for Georgia on the fundraising end.
Hello, everyone. My name's Mary Pence. I'm part of the fundraising strategy team, and I'm going to share my screen successfully for once, it seems. So this, like Lisa, when something speaks to me, I want to share it with you. And this is something that Robert Hubble published a couple of days ago. And he said, Americans did something on Tuesday that was both extraordinary and unremarkable. They voted in a vigorously contested election that unfolded in peace and security. But most importantly, all it took to dispel and I can't see what it is on the right hand of my page, uncertainty about America's future was a reminder that we look to the Constitution and the rule of law for governance. Each of you is part of an unbroken chain of faithful servants of democracy. Our charge is to safeguard democracy until the next generation rises to the task. We can do that. We did it in 2010 and 2020 and 2022. And so now the curtain is rising on the last act of the election cycle of 2022. So you unbroken chain of faithful servants of democracy, what can you do? Specifically, you can do three things. You can contribute in the chat, and I want to let you know that our goal for this grassroots, this wonderful grassroots group is $200,000. You should know that 31st Street has never failed to meet a goal. And I would like us to not only meet this goal, but exceed it. Because I had a little back and forth with my brother Jim about what this goal should be. So you'd be helping me personally if we exceed this goal. So that's number one. Number two is you can come to this fundraiser, this Zoom fundraiser on the 17th of November. That's just 4 days away, but we have a really tight time frame. And here is the beautiful graphic for the fundraiser that Peter Hansen developed for us, showing all the groups, or at least most of them, that you just heard a discussion of. It's going to be, as I said, Thursday, November 7th. So the second thing you can do is come to this event. And the third thing you can do is agree to be a co-host. It's incredibly easy to co-host. All you do is take the invitation that we send to you, copy and paste it into emails to all those in your network that you believe care as much as you do about saving our democracy, and then send out the reminder card that we'll also send you the day before. Incredibly easy and incredibly rewarding. So if you're willing to be a co-host, please send me an email and say, yes, I'm in. So for those who are willing to take on the challenge of doing all three of these things, you will indeed be a faithful servant of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Now Roberta McInerney, one of our leaders of the Georgia team, on something else that you can do. Roberta?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about an effective and easy letter writing opportunity that will really help in the runoff election. The letters are for a group called Working America that has been mentioned already on this call. Working America is aiming to write letters to 100,000 of its members in Georgia. and they need our help to do that. Many of our members wrote letters for Working America before the November 8th election. I'm just curious, raise your hand if you were one of those folks. Quite a few. Thank you. Thank you very much. So many of you are familiar already. For those of you who haven't heard about Working America or don't know much about them, they are a community affiliate of the AFL-CIO. That's for working people who don't belong to unions, mainly non-college educated, non-cable news watching voters. Working America's letter writing campaign has been demonstrated through randomized trials to bring in 2 to 3 new Democratic voters per 100 letters to members. So translating that to Georgia, sending 100,000 letters to Georgia will bring in an additional 2,000 to 3,000 new Democratic votes for Raphael Warnock, which is huge since this will be a close election. The process is really simple. You sign up online, and we're going to put the link in the chat. You'll get directions and names and addresses of members in Georgia to send letters to. The Working America staff is very helpful. They'll answer questions. And you get a batch of 50 letters, which sounds like a lot, but it only takes 1 to 2 hours to do. You print out the letters and you mail them out, and you do hand address the envelopes. That makes a huge difference. And we've had people at 31st Street do hundreds of batches of letters. So importantly, all letters have to be postmarked by November 26th. You start mailing them as soon as you're done with them. So they go out now through the 26th. And I really encourage you to do these letters. They've been proven effective, and they really take a small amount of time. One batch, you can do 1 to 2 hours and you're done. And do another one if you can. When you do sign up, be sure to put 31st Street in the little box that Working America has for who referred you to the program, and so that we can keep track of our participants. So one final note that's important, that we found is important for people, the Working America letters don't mention Reverend Warnock. So they won't mention him at all. And it may not be intuitive to you at all, but the letters work. Working America uses an issue-based approach when they contact their members. And their letter writing plan has been tested multiple times. So people who are reminded, for example, of how much they care about affordable health care and feel personal allegiance to Working America, they end up voting for candidates who support affordable health care, i.e. Democrats. So please let us know if you have questions. Thank you all very much. I've already signed up, and please sign up. It'll really help. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. It's wonderful. Okay, before we move to the last part of the meeting, we have a little gift video that Jim is going to post from a candidate we supported in Pennsylvania.
Ryan, you can hear me? So this is from Krista Luzio. See if this works okay.
Hello, 31st Street folks. How you doing? I'm sorry I couldn't drop in, but it's Krista Luzio here. I wanted to say a big and hearty thank you for helping me and so many others win and have a great night on Tuesday, especially in Pennsylvania, and my race in particular. You guys did a lot. Raised over $100,000 for me at a time when money was tight, when we really had to play catch up and demonstrate that we could raise the resources we needed to win. You really helped me get there. And beyond that, you knocked thousands of doors, which really, as you know, makes a big difference in any race, but certainly one that was and is as competitive as mine, and really made a big difference. It helped us win this thing. So know that I appreciate you. I'm so looking forward and hoping I'll be able to pop in and say hello on a meeting here soon. I'm head down to Washington very soon to do orientation. Thanks for all you did to help send me there. I look forward to us working together to get some things done in DC. And we have some priorities, believe me, whether that's on voting rights, reproductive freedom, standing up for unions and workers, and making more stuff in this country. I can go on and on. But important things I think we can still get done, and especially with us flipping our Senate seat here in Pennsylvania as well, and John Fetterman. So thanks for all you did. Look forward to us continuing to work together, and I hope I'll see you on a meeting here soon. Thanks, everybody. Hello, 31st.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jim. I'm sure Jim had
Great.
something to do with getting
great.
things done, but that's wonderful. Chris DeLuzio was going to come as a guest speaker, but he was just too busy. So he sent that instead, which was really wonderful. Before we go, just to sort of open the mic to some general questions, I just wanted to do some thank yous as we are heading towards the end of this year. There are so many people in 31st Street to name and thank. I can't name everybody. I want to basically send out a thank you to every single person who donated, who co-hosted a fundraiser, who invited friends and family to come to the fundraisers. We did many fundraisers this year. And, you know, it was hard to keep going back to friends and family and saying, there's one more fundraiser. There's one more grassroots group. Can you please come again? But people did that over and over and over again. And we are so grateful for your help. We are grateful for every single person who knocked on doors. We're grateful for every single person who wrote letters, who navigated phone banking and texting, which was sometimes very complicated, but you did it and you connected with people, and it really, really made a difference. So we just want to thank everybody who did all of that. But I am going to just mention a few names of people, but I wish I could mention everybody. I want to, of course, thank Mary Pence and Jim Shelton for their incredible leadership and just the hours and hours and hours and hours that they put into this since 2017. 31st Street would not be 31st Street without them. And I rely on them for everything. And I am just very, very grateful that they are the leaders of this group. I want to thank all of the leaders on our team. We have just an incredible group of people who pitch in again, week after week after week after week. I want to thank Michael Friedman and the Pennsylvania team, Joe Esposito, who helps her. I want to thank Michelle Heinbach for doing everything with Working America and letters and everything else. She's sort of a whirling dervish of energy, and she just does a zillion things, and I am very grateful for her as well. John Medaglia and Roberta McInerney for the Georgia team. They spearheaded information sessions. They did that on their own. They gathered people to be on the Georgia team who became a really loyal group of members who were just backing Georgia. Very grateful for their initiative and their leadership. I'm grateful for Jan White and everything she has been doing for North Carolina. No matter what happens in North Carolina, we are making a difference. And Jan White, who is from North Carolina, and you can tell by her accent, really has whipped together an incredible group of people who are doing ballot curing this week. And I'm just so glad that Jan is there on North Carolina. She's not going to go away no matter what happens in North Carolina. George Hastings and Joanne Harris have done an incredible job organizing our canvassing, sending out Sunday canvassing letters, making sure there are leaders for the canvassing every weekend. It's really a huge job. They do it with good cheer and in good mood, no matter what happens. And I am incredibly grateful for both of them. They also gather all of the canvassing statistics so that we know that we've knocked on over 24,000 doors. It's kind of amazing. So thank you to them. Thank you to Aaron Hamburger, our membership leader and our jack of all trades, who helps me with 9 million things. I text Aaron whenever I'm in a panic, and he helps me do whatever needs to be done. Dan Pence, who is wonderful on graphics, who puts together our slate graphics and backs up Mary and helps out in whatever way we need. Thank you to Dan. Thank you to Dan Weistrop, who moved to Mexico City, but he was our tech guy and he has really been helping us for years and years. Thank you to Adele Dari, who is now our Colorado leader, and she has been knocking on doors and gathering together grassroots people out in Boulder, Colorado. Thank you to her. Thank you to Amy Kossoff, who is our calendar person. She's our calendar guru, our hostess of all of our picnics. and basically somebody that I talk to whenever I need a boost in any way. Peter Hansen, our newest member on the leadership team, he is a whiz with graphics. He jumps in whether he's traveling to Europe or Africa, or he's on an airplane, he's creating graphics for us, and we couldn't do our job without him. So thank you to Peter, and we're very glad that you are with us. And then quickly, I just want to shout out to the fundraising team and everybody who's been helping us on the fundraising team. Mary is our leader, but we have a wonderful group of people who help out and join meetings whenever she calls one. Thank you to Jim Coates, who edits our videos. Thank you to Christine Dibble and Karen Askaranam, who format our newsletters. Christine Dibble formats week in, week out. I send her a newsletter late at night. She does it in the morning. She's incredible. I want to thank Julie Greenberg, Diane Capellian, Catherine Hazard for just being canvassers extraordinaire and organizing their own efforts with their own groups of volunteers. They're sort of leaders off working in leadership ways to do all the things that they do on their own. Incredibly grateful to them. And who have I forgotten? Let me just look at my list. I think I've covered it. There are also just a number of members of 31st Street who have been with us for years, and the list is too long for me to read your names, but I think you know who you are. You come to our monthly meetings, you co-host our fundraisers, you send me wonderful replies to the newsletters, you send me poems, you send me photographs. I am grateful that you are part of the core of 31st Street. And I love to see your face every time we have these meetings. And I'm just really, really grateful that you're still with us. Kate Sugarman, who went out to Wisconsin, who met Mandela Barnes. She's another person who's just thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do. And that is the end of my thank yous. And I just appreciate everybody so much.